I mean, the light, when you have it like this, just even, and I mean this highlight here, pretty nice, but you don't really have a character, and that's kind of boring. So once you add something from the side, like you punch that one. Now this one isn't balanced, this is a weird color on my skin, so you would have to white balance that. Or you do it with the lights, you put gels on them. So that looks a little bit weird. You put it to this side, you have a rim like so. That looks pretty nice, it's a nice character. You don't have to light pretty faces and make everything smooth and all that. That's just boring. I wouldn't go that route. I'd try to light mood and try to set a tone and style through the lighting. Much, much better. Okay, anyway, I guess that's the essence of lighting, is setting character and all that. Now, this is the weirdest selfie stick I've ever had. It's my whole tripod and everything. But I think it might look pretty cool. It's heavy though. Should see it. It's a whole tripod with a C300 and a mic on it. I probably won't do this again.
If we look at this scene that I shot for a commercial a couple of months ago, it's a fisherman that's going out early morning. We were a tiny crew. Me and a gaffer was alone to create the look. What we did first was to scout out the place. You should go to the places and look at how the light will strike. You can use an app like Sunseeker to figure out where the light is going to be and at what time. And then you plan after that. Once we'd done that, we decided where we would put the boat to shoot the starting scene when he was loading the boat with his gear. As we got there in the morning, we'd planned where it would be, we knew what would be behind him, the sun was gonna come up slowly. It would be a nice backdrop to him loading the boat. The streetlights would add a three-dimensional feeling to the scene. But they wouldn't be in the right place to light his face as we wanted. So we brought a boom light. My gaffer was standing outside of the frame to boom the light so that we would get a correct exposure on him, as well as set a character for the light. Now this had a mix of light temperatures. We didn't have resources to change the street lights. Ideally we would have changed the colors, but instead we kept it around 5600 Kelvin to have a base, and then we removed the orange by desaturating the street lights in the grade. Then as we were going out, we were first on a different boat, going next to his boat. I was shooting him from the side, and my gaffer was in front of me, with the light boom stretched over to the character's boat, lighting his face from the front of the boat. Now it's subtle, much because the light wasn't all that strong, but without it, it would be just totally black, it would be a silhouette. Or we could have changed the ISO to get a correct exposure, but that would introduce noise and shit into the picture. Here we had a perfect backdrop in terms of light, so being there at the right time meant that we had no need for lighting the environment or anything. Ideally we would have a stronger light, maybe even rig a light onto his boat. But we didn't have the time, so instead we boomed the light to be able to get more shots as the sun was coming up. In the boat we did the same thing. We boomed everything. And what's important here is to move to the right position to get the natural light that the sun and the practicals create in the right place. Then you add a light source to make it look good.
Alright, so now I'm actually shooting this, and I have the sun behind me. That would be a really hard situation to shoot in if you don't have any additional light. Now ideally I wouldn't have a camera light on this, but now I do. Okay, so when you're shooting stuff that is with the sun, you need to think about how can you create a negative fill often. And now I just have a negative fill that is a small tiny Luma cube on the camera, but I think it's a little bit hard to see, but I think it actually creates the fill light that you need to be able to shoot against the sun where you have the nicest light at this moment. So what I do is usually I try to find a way to use the environments that are already there. In this case, I want that sun. You know, the sun and the mist over there, it's magical. There's really not, you know, a better light to shoot towards. Now shooting in the other direction could look okay. I mean, it's not ugly, but it's boring. Shooting in this direction, let me just see so I have the focus right. Seeing in this direction with this light, I mean, who would be able to recreate this? Nobody would be able to recreate a light like this. It's magical. But to be able to shoot against that, it might be a tiny bit overexposed. Maybe I would want it to be here, so I would want a little bit more light coming from this side. But really, I just have a Luma cube, which I can show you. It's this tiny cube here. As you can see, it's not like a daylight thing. So let me just remove the diffusing gel that I have and see if I can get it a little bit stronger. I never remember how many times you should push this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, 9. I think it's 9. Okay, so now it's a little bit brighter. So for vlogging, this is actually perfect. So now I have this light. I can point it towards the pretty light over there. And you really have a pretty magical setup here. Now if you wouldn't have the Luma cube, you would be pretty screwed up because you couldn't shoot in that direction. And I've said it too many times now, but I mean, any light that you can get that can kind of make it possible for you to use the pretty light, try to use it. Like, if you do docs, you have to work with the light that you have. So let's say I would take this and I would put it this direction. This would be ideal, I'd say, to have, you know, the eye light. So I could actually walk like this, holding it, and you can see, I mean, the light that I'm getting now with front lit and then all the other stuff happening behind me, that is pretty amazing with this little light. But of course it would look weird if I have my hand sticking out holding a light like this. But really, like, the strength that I would be going for would maybe be somewhere around here. So if you have a boom and a gaffer, you have a really nice situation going on. You will get pretty perfect lighting, I'd say. And it's just the same as booming any boom operator for sound. Even this direction, when you kind of have a light that is countering maybe the sunlight. I mean, the sunlight is really pretty, so it looks okay. But as I said, a bit boring compared to this. That's coming real strong. So maybe if you can see, yeah, here you can actually see. This is a really pretty light. Of course, not pretty to be walking with a light in the image, but I mean, if you look at the strength of it, I think it looks pretty good. So it suits the purpose of doing a demo. And when you light like this, you get a more cinematic quality to the image. And yeah, everybody wants that, right? So now you know. Secret to cinematic. This isn't so cinematic. You could actually, if you look at the light here, that's nice. If you then add from this side, you can also get a more cinematic look. So it's not about putting it in the front. Like most people that I see on YouTube, they use this stupid ass ring light. Don't use the ring light. It's the terrible light, terrible. You get all the features removed from a face. Use light sources like this, light a character. Much better.
Here we have a different scene that's only using natural light. For this we hadn't scouted the location, but we had done it online instead. We'd Googled images and looked at Google Maps to figure out where the light would be. So we knew that it would be coming from the lake towards the gas station. As we got there, we had some trouble in the spot that we had planned to shoot in. It was good for the wider shots, but we couldn't get the light to look good when she was going to the pump station. So we had to adapt. It's really important to be flexible if you're shooting in natural light. And you need to know what story you're trying to tell in order to figure out how the images will cut together. So we started by shooting the driver checking the cargo in the first spot. We had the sunlight coming from the lake facing us. To counterfill the sunlight, we had a reflector. Then as the sun was going away, we had to make some drastic decisions in order to get the shots we needed. We decided to move the shots to the regular car pumps. We had about 5 minutes to nail these images, with the sun peeking through in the back of the gas station. We wanted it to be backlit by the sun, and only use the reflector to fill in the negative side. This was then cut together to look like it was the same place. It worked out perfect, but you really need to know what you want to have as an end result in order to find solutions like this. Here's a much more controlled example of how to create a traditional cinematic look. Now we'd scouted this location and we knew that the light from the ceiling would look great. But we had to fight to get a permit to use a haze machine in there. That was essential for us to create a classic boxing cinematic look that we were going for. Until the last minute, we worried that we wouldn't get it. It would have been a much harder look to pull off without the smoke. Now instead we had a lot of practical lights, mixing in with some harsh light sources coming from the side or backlighting the fighter. We put it high up in order for us to have them out of the picture. Then, much like the fisherman scene, we moved around with a flyer, the boom pole with a diffused Westcott 1x1 panel mounted onto it. This was a pretty time-consuming setup, because we had to light the whole space and it was pretty big. But sometimes I really try to take the time to do these types of setups in order to create a certain look. But it all depends on resources. If you have the time and money to do stuff like that. Often I don't have the opportunity to light things like I want. So what I'm essentially forced into is using the stuff that I got. That makes it really important to scout locations. And it really helps to create a mood board with pictures of the look you want to create beforehand. Then you know what to look out for. Much of the cinematic lighting comes down to planning, then grading, but that's a whole other chapter. Okay, thanks for watching. Any suggestions as to how to light a cinematic scene? Comment below. See ya.